everybody. I thank you all for joining us. My name is Erica, and I'm going to be moderating this session today and giving this wonderful presentation on demonstrating skills by being real and why authentic assessment matters is Brian Barger. He is an instructor and the online learning coordinator at Hazard Community and Technical College, and I'm sure whatever he is going to share with us today will be useful and helpful for you as you continue working on your courses. And just wanted to give you a few quick reminders. If you have a question and would like to have your um, mic enabled, just raise your hand and I will enable your mic. As of right now, everybody is muted. And Brian will also be saving some time at the end of the presentation for questions, but if something comes up and you'd like to ask, you need to go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand and I can open your mic for you. So not to prolong this any longer, since we're running just a touch late, Mr. Brian Barger.
All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to spend time with us at KOOLCon. And from me to you, thank you very much for taking your valuable time to come and listen to me. I hope when you walk away from this that I've given you something that is worth the time you invested in me. So if I don't do that, let me know, and that way I'll try to do better the next time. But hopefully you'll walk away with something that'll be useful for all of your courses going forward. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're talking about authentic assessment, and for what I see here, apparently that PDF didn't load very well, so I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment, and I'm going to load the actual PowerPoint to see if that will work a little bit better. So give me just a moment while I drag that over. And I apologize for the skewing that will probably take place with this. It does tend to do that somewhat, but at least it won't look as though that last one did. So here in just a moment, that should take care of things. But about me, so I'm a lifelong learner, as I'm sure most of you guys are. You take classes a lot, you spend time learning more and more things, and it seems like all the time we learn new skills. All right. So for me, some of the most important and impactful things I've learned all came from authentic assessments, things that somehow or another enabled me to demonstrate my skill sets, enabled me to demonstrate things that I could do. It allowed me to find enjoyment in the assessments, be able to learn, how to integrate different things from across different subjects and concepts, how to put them all together and make things work, so to speak. It gave me the ability to think critically, to solve problems, give me confidence in myself. Those are the kinds of assessments that students really like. They enjoy those things. They don't necessarily care for assignments that can sometimes be considered boring or mundane, but they really do seem to enjoy those kinds of assessments that challenge them, that spark their creativity, that help them to learn more about themselves and apply things that they're learning in class to the here and now, the present, and even the future for their careers and things that interest them. So what I hear from my students is that they just love being able to reflect on things they learn. So I've put a lot of reflection inside my course, and I get a lot of feedback saying that they just enjoy that. It enables them to help connect the dots of what they're learning inside the course to how it impacts them in their life, how it's going to impact them going forward. And so they get to make those connections, and that obviously helps with retention and being able to take information from one course and apply it into other courses and other situations in life. So I think that's one of the things about authentic assessment that is truly, truly valuable. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover. Again, I apologize for some of the things going on with the screen. Hopefully they'll get that corrected at some point. But we're going to cover a couple of things. So we'll talk about the case for authentic assessment, why it's important, ways to implement it, and the types of authentic assessments that you can think about, maybe some examples of those things. We'll talk about all those important things. So let's get started with the case for authentic assessment. So traditional instruction methods, they've been used way long time, since before any of us were born. Some of the same things that we do today can be pulled back to Middle Ages. So it's been around for a really long time. Most of us probably had the same kind of general classroom format, throughout grade school, high school, even college. So we probably listened to an instructor provide lectures, probably had to read a whole bunch of chapters and memorize some information, do traditional homework assignments, take those things home, bring them back the next day, and do a whole lot of tests. Sometimes those will be formative learning checks. Sometimes they'll be summative or cumulative exams at the end of some sort of module or some sort of week, or even midterm or end of semester type exams. So we're all very familiar with those sorts of things. And most likely our exams counted for a large portion of our grade. I've had some of those where they were as much as 50%, which can be quite stressful and anxiety inducing. We actually talked about that in another session from yesterday. But we probably felt some varying degrees of stress because of those things. So the best way really to help students today is to continue those sort of practices? Well, let's take a look at that. So we go to a lot of great lengths to try to prevent cheating. All right. And let's face it, we're not doing a great job at that. So there's all sorts of studies out there, but I want to point out a few things there on the slide. You can see those things, presented there. But, we know that students can cheat. At the same time, we know they cheat for certain reasons. Okay, so students don't necessarily hold academic integrity to the level that we hold it to. Internet, mobile devices, instant messaging, social media, this way of being completely interconnected has, for better or for worse, it's changed the way that they see learning and education. So as can be seen from these statistics, most of those from Cleveland.com study or op-ed, they suggest very disturbing figures when it comes to academic integrity. 28% of students even said that an academic service, so think CHEG or something of that nature, actually took their online course for them. Additionally, from the International Center for Academic Integrity, study finds that more than 60% of university students freely admitting to cheating in some form or another, and in high school that's 95%. So the overwhelming majority of students have participated in cheating in some form or another. So what do we do about it? Well, we proctor exams, right? Because this lessens their ability to cheat. We hope that that the thought of being caught will be enough. We hope that a failing grade will be enough to convince them that they need to do their own work. We trust that the threat of academic suspension or expulsion from school will deter them from taking these kinds of actions. But we're all wrong about this, completely wrong, in fact. As the statistics show, it's very common. So why do students cheat? We all have a lot going on. So as faculty and staff members, we have our jobs. We have teaching responsibilities, advising, we've got committees, we've got teams, we've got work groups. We do course design and redesign, and we're grading and providing feedback. We're answering student questions. We're talking with colleagues and answering their questions and having to solve a myriad of problems. Then we have to add in our own personal lives and the things that are going on there. So, our leisure time, maybe we have sick relatives that we have to care for, maybe we have children, we have all these other things apart from all the stressors of work. And what about social engagements? So things like community and church and event organizations and things that we do because we're passionate about them. There's always something vying for our time. And students, they're not any different than us. They may look a little bit different in terms of what they have to do, but students, they they typically tend to have jobs or family responsibilities, maybe children, maybe they have food or housing or transportation insecurities. They have just a bunch of other concerns. So it's certainly a problem. And it's not an excuse, nobody's saying that. But it's something to consider as to why sometimes students cheat. And so they have a real or perceived concerns that are manifested in their decision-making process. So according to Proctor EDU, Asian cultures where the community is more about you know collective working together or more about community, right? They have less issues with plagiarisms. So in the Americas, particularly the United States, we really value individualism, and so that's a whole other situation that we've got going on, right? We want students to be individuals, to stand on their own 2 feet, to do the things that show they can do things. Whereas in other cultures, particularly in Asian cultures and Eastern European cultures, they're less inclined to call that cheating. They call that more of collaboration and more of community and sort of working together. So it's an interesting thought, right? So
Bryan,
one thing
um,
sure.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, but Elizabeth has an interesting story that she shared, and I didn't know
Oh,
if it would
fantastic.
if it would fit into what you were going to touch on coming up. So I wanted to bring it up. She said she has an adjunct faculty member who she didn't know wrote his own papers in college and grad school. His mother wrote them, and she learned that she was smart on the paper feedback and decided to go to college. And she was um, her advisee and the best student tutor, worker tutor she had ever had. Her cheating for him gave her the education she missed out on, which I think just aligned with a little
Wow.
bit what you were talking about as far as the different cultures and how it's viewed as more of a collaboration. So I just wanted to point that out.
That is a really fascinating story. I like that, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing. So that's really cool. It talks, or it sort of goes to, his mom's was doing something, right? And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. It's like, I'm doing this. Why don't I just do this for me? I think that's really cool. So we know that cheating is out there, right? So I thought, when I saw these images, that this is a really cool way to sort of show the lengths that some students may go to. Of course, not all students go to such great lengths, but certainly interesting to see, right? So it may be challenging to actually see, but inside those fingernails are very, very small print math formulas. Inside the student's hair is rolled up paper with a lot of very small, fine notes. To the watch there, it's like a scroll. So the student can just wind the watch in a way to go through and see information. And of course, the most clever one that I saw, which is also the most devious, is a calculator that's actually a cell phone. It just has a calculator exterior. So it looks like a regular Casio calculator, but it's got the power of Google behind it. So I thought those were all really interesting. So what can be done about cheating? Proctor EDU, I referenced them a minute ago, they obviously want you to use their proctoring solution. And that's a service they provide. And we use Respondus. We've got that available to us at KCTCS. But is proctoring really the best solution? No matter how strict you are with an exam, no matter how cheat proof you make it, right? Scanning the rooms, making sure the camera's on all the time, that sort of stuff. Regardless of what you do with those, where there's a will, there's a way. If students are pressured enough, if they're feeling enough, force behind them to make them want to cheat, they can find a way to circumvent anything. There's actually videos online, if you don't know, about how to cheat with respondus engaged or with respondus on. So there's YouTube videos about that. So in an earlier presentation, I talked about TikTok and YouTube generation. So if they're constantly on there, if they want to find out how to circumvent respondus, it's out there. It's very easy to find. So many times more effort goes into finding a way to cheat than it does to actually prepare for the exam. So is this really something that's serving the needs of our students, or is it allowing them to promote 21st century skills that employers want? Employers want things like creative thinking, collaboration. They want decision making, problem solving, creativity, curiosity, the ability to work independently, but also work collectively in teams. They want somebody who is able to go out and learn new knowledge. So we sometimes call that lifelong learning or learning how to learn. So can't we, as a group of people, as educators, do better than just simply forcing students into traditional educational boxes of lecture and homework problems, tests, rinse and repeat? Wouldn't a classroom of engaged, question asking, enthused, and responsive students be a little bit of a better option? I sort of think so. So if you think so, let's do a quick little chat poll. If you think that a classroom of engaged students is something that you would much prefer and that students would much prefer, throw in the chat yes. If you disagree with me, which is perfectly fine, throw in no. And if you want to throw in a side bit of humor, that's all right too. You can throw up and say, engaged students still exist. Perfectly fine with all of those things. But, we talk about engagement. We want that, right? Because we understand that it's important. You learn more and you receive more benefit from things when you're working together, when you're actively participating. There's a huge difference between passive learning and active learning. You obviously retain much, much more with active learning when you're truly engaged in something. And that's what we want to try to do. And sometimes the traditional methods we use to bring that about don't necessarily serve our best interest. So why is it that authentic assessment's important? So authentic assessment is just simply a different way of thinking about traditional assignments. It helps students to use their minds, to be able to use their critical thinking skills, to be able to analyze problems and comprehend information from a variety of sources, sort of put it all together like one big giant jigsaw puzzle. And the sense of accomplishment that you get when you do something like that really not only makes you feel good, but it solidifies the fact that you can take information from a bunch of different sources, put it together, make something meaningful of it, and it tells yourself, it reaffirms that you're capable of doing something. And students often need a lot of reaffirmation. They need, someone telling them, yes, you did a great job. That's why feedback's important. Being able to tell students, you did a wonderful job. This is great. This is fantastic. Even probably the highest level of praise an instructor could get would be, I'd really love to use what you created as an example for other students, right? Because it shows that they met all the things that you wanted them to achieve and they excelled at it. And as a student, if you've ever had that happen, there's a sense of pride that just comes from that, and you feel really good. You're truly reaffirmed that, I can do this. So you feel great about your capabilities and your abilities to do some things. So when we talk about authentic assessment, why it's important, students don't necessarily need to memorize facts and figures. Now, yes, there are some situations where you need to understand some things and you need to have certain bits of information in your mind at the ready, so to speak. But they can show their knowledge and application of knowledge in different and other more creative ways. It doesn't mean watering down a course. Actually, it means it's making it much better. It makes it more real world applicable. Students retain more of the information. they enjoy it more, they're engaged more, they tend to help other people out, and instructors get a lot from it too, because now you get to stop being the one who is, the talking head or the sage on the stage, sometimes they call it, and you get to be someone who observes and facilitates conversation and helps students to learn and go down new pathways to help them, develop more. So it's more rewarding for you as an instructor as well. So let's take a look at an example, if you will. So think about this for just a moment. If I'm an IT manager, there's so many systems, so many things I have to know. There's a lot of different systems. It's hard to really think about all of them, but I thought about a few, and I just wanted to present those. So as an IT manager, you might have to know about different OSs or operating systems, right? So you may need to know about Windows or Mac or Chrome OS or even Linux. You may need to know about hardware. So we're talking about motherboards and video cards and hard drives and SSDs and flash drives and the differences between those things, power supplies and, different types of RAM and whether that will work and, if it all fits together on the specs of the motherboard. Then you need to know stuff about mass productive software. So things like Office 365 or LibreOffice or OpenOffice or Adobe or any of those other systems that are out there, or software packages, software suites that are out there that we all use, right? Anybody ever used a software suite and you really found an issue, and so you couldn't quite resolve it, so you kind of shot a message to the help desk and asked them for help? If you did that, pop a yes in the chat. Kind of gives you an opportunity to sort of see if other people have done the same things. And I'll freely admit, even though I do research a lot of things, sometimes I get stumped on some stuff too. So I pop a message over to a colleague to see if they have seen something like that before. So, we talk about even specific software, things like OnBase or PeopleSoft or Starfish. And then, what we're dealing with right now with Blackboard. So we look at LMSs and how they interact with, let's say, third-party applications or LTIs. I mean, just think about the sheer number of interconnected pieces. So now imagine that you're that IT manager and you're trying to remember all the facts and figures for each one of those systems so that you can have that information at the ready and just regurgitate it like you're sitting there ready for an examination. In all situations, that's probably not going to happen. It's just a lot to remember. Even the best of people, and James and Chris, both of those guys are fantastic at what they do with the LMS. But I don't think they even know all that stuff. But they do take what they know and they apply it in different ways, and they're able to solve problems. And that's where the value lies. So standardized and traditional test taking really focuses on memorization and facts and figures and things that are definitely good to know, especially if you want to get on Jeopardy or a quiz show. But it doesn't always translate to being able to use those skills to solve real world problems or be able to do things that enhance your value as an employee to a company. So the value in the marketplace comes when I can take information that I've gleaned and learned over the years and be able to solve a real world situation or problem. So knowing how to tell the difference between a legitimate and a trustworthy resource, that's huge, right? Because we know students are getting on Google and they're looking up whatever. And if they're trying to do a quiz or do some sort of assignment for you, they're just pulling up whatever, and they don't sometimes realize that the sources they pull up might be misinformation or disinformation. It may not be very credible. It may be something that isn't, academically useful, but even to that extent, just real and applicable in the real world. So what we sort of look at is we need to have students be able to know the differences between resources and how to apply knowledge and learn how to learn and sort of filter out the garbage content, the false statements, the untrustworthy resources and sources of information. And this is where the application of knowledge and authentic assessment really is very important and just something that's really paramount, I believe. So it's, you can Google a whole lot of stuff, right? And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that in a sense. But would any of you want your ER doctor or your ER nurse Googling how to stop bleeding? Probably not. So part of that's for a lot of reasons. But what if the specific thing that you need is not what Google researches to stop, right? So the application of knowledge is being able to take what they get. So let's assume they did do a Google search because maybe they know 7 different ways, but then being able to filter out the best way to stop that bleeding from occurring. That's where the value is, and that's being able to apply what they've learned and use that in ways that's meaningful. So, going back to the IT example a moment ago, most employers don't really care if you know the OSI 7-layer model. Some of you probably never heard of that. You use it every day, but it works behind the scenes. In all situations, it's mostly irrelevant to the majority of people. But do you understand that model? If you're working in networking and IT, do you understand it? Do you know what it means? And if there's a problem, do you know how to trace down that? That's what really matters. Not the fact that you know what the 7 layers are or what they're supposed to do, but can you actually apply that? Can you actually put it to use? Knowing how to apply information is far more important than just memorizing facts and figures. So real quick, let's take another poll, if you will. So if you will, in the last week, if you've used a search engine, so Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, whatever, if you've used a search engine to look up something that you needed to know and then use that to apply to some larger problem, pop yes in the chat. So if you took time to Google something that you didn't know, but then use that in some sort of way to solve a bigger issue, pop yes in the chat. Let's see what's going on. Right, see a lot of yeses. Right, so what we're doing is we're taking information that we've learned in the past, and we're taking new information from different sources, and we're trying to solve problems and solve issues and deal with things. And that's really where the value comes in at. Okay, so let's talk about ways you can implement authentic assessment. So I see a couple of pops. There we go. Go ahead.
Brian, I just wanted to make sure you knew that we've got 10 minutes left.
Fantastic. Okay. In that case, I'm going to start talking fast. So ways that we can implement this. It's not always easy to make change, but if you're interested in making change, this is a great thing to do. All right. So think about ways that you can actually implement authentic assessment inside your course. So start with the end goal in mind. Think about what it is that you want your students to demonstrate and what it is that you want them to be able to do. So in this case, let's take an example like an academic plan. I want them to be able to do that. Now we work backwards. So make sure you have your competencies well aligned with, or your goals well aligned with your competencies and your outcomes. So if I want them to do an academic plan, what does that look like? Well, could I have them do a PowerPoint, or could I have them do a group project? Could I have them make a video, or even an oral recitation? Could I have them do some sort of recitation for that? Right? Could I have them talk about it? Could I have them maybe make me an art project that demonstrates that? It gives a lot of creativity for that. So once I know a few types of assignments, or assessments, ways to figure out how I want them to figure out an academic plan or present that, then I pick 1, maybe 2, 3 of those as options, and then I start thinking about which one do I want them to do. Now, if you really want to take it a step further, you can think about learner choice theory and then actually just use 3 or 4 of the best ones and then let the students decide, because that'll create another level of engagement and really ratchet up the fact that this is a true experience for them. So then we make sure that the students have clear guidance and they understand what's expected of them, what they're going to be graded on, perhaps a rubric that really details what it is that you're looking for, but still provides that creativity and flexibility. And then whatever options are chosen, we just ensure that it has meaning and relevance to the real world. So if it's relevant to students, then they end up finishing those projects, they do better on them, they spend more time on them, they're more engaged with them, and it's something that really gets to show their creativity and the fact that they've put in some effort to that. So remember that in an authentic assessment, there isn't really a right or a wrong way. It's just about learning how to learn and using knowledge in a different way. It's about developing skill sets. And that's what most employers want today. They want students with skill sets, not just the ability to regurgitate information.
Brian?
So authentic assessment is about the journey of learning, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Brian. Oh, well, Lee had a question. She, excuse me, she mentioned some information needs to be memorized so we can build off of it.
Yes.
Like when we search, we need to know some definitions and what icons mean. And
Right.
she followed it up with, how would you be able to apply Maslow's hierarchy if you don't understand the basic concept of hierarchy? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
So yeah, there's definitely some things that you should need to know. That's when we talk about Maslow's hierarchy or even Bloom's taxonomy. We have sort of different stages, right? So in Bloom's, in particular, you sort of start with just knowing something or understanding something, then eventually you get to the point where you're able to create something creatively with more freedom, more expression, more abilities. So yeah, you can't really jump to the peak, right? Sometimes you have to climb the mountain, so to speak. So you got to start with basic information. So yes, some things do need to be memorized, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's saying that you get rid of all of that. But what you are sort of thinking about is how do we do more authentic assessment? How do we make options available to students to where they can take the things that they have learned and memorized and apply it in ways that deepens that understanding? So we'll try to keep moving forward because I know we're limited on time, so we'll keep going here. But here's some examples. Think about a few things that you could do. So role plays, presentations, simulation games. Those are very, very popular, allow for a lot of deep level learning. Self-assessments, reviews. There's nothing wrong with testing, like I mentioned, in the right kind of situation. It's just not all tests are created equal. So we want to use authentic assessment techniques and practices that help students to really just deepen their understanding of things so that when they get out in the workforce, they are better prepared for what's coming for them. And it's not an us versus them, right? We're not saying that you get rid of all things that are traditional. We're not saying just wholeheartedly adapt authentic assessment, but we are saying that the two of them work together. They are symbiotic relationships. They can work together if designed for that intent and purpose. So keep that in mind. We're not saying that you completely get rid of some of the more traditional learning styles. I'm not saying we completely take all of authentic assessment, but what we are saying is that they do go together and they can help one another, and they're not combative to one another. They are things that work collectively. So think about some things in your courses. Hopefully I've given you some ideas, and maybe you can start thinking about ways that you can implement something in one of your courses. Maybe you can change up an assignment. Maybe you can add something that stretches over a couple of different models that sort of wraps everything together. Maybe you can think about ways that you can do something that's different, unique, or more engaging. Maybe you can even poll students, in this coming spring semester about something that they would like to see and try implementing that in the fall semester. So it's all about looking at ways that we can better serve students and help them not only in their current college journey, but going forward as well. So in summary, authentic assessment looks to give students a real world experience It doesn't water down learning. It actually enhances and deepens those. And it really builds on those 21st century skills that students need and that employers want. So I know we're sort of pressed for time, but thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate you spending some time with me and particularly with KOOLCon. You could have chosen to do something else with your time, but you chose this, and I really hope that you've gotten something of value. Hopefully I've spurred some sort of thought in your mind as to a way that you can use authentic assessment in some form or fashion to help your students to learn more, develop more, and get those kind of 21st century skills that we talked about, in multiple cases. I've talked about them across a couple of different presentations. But we'll look over at the chat. Looks like we've got a few things. Erica, do we have anything coming in as we wrap up?
Yes, we had some commentary back and forth, but Lisa had a question.
Okay, sort of skipped out for a second.
Have any examples or information on simulation games for math?
I believe I can find some of those. Lisa, if you will, send me an email. I believe that was Lisa that said that. But if you will, send me an email, and I'll see what I can find for you. I believe I remember seeing some of those, so I'll be more than happy to try to dig those up and send them to you.
Okay, I'm looking through.
Escape rooms are very popular. We use a lot of those in K-12. They really love those things.
Yeah, there's a
teaching 9-year-olds multiplication tables. That's fun stuff. I had to do that. I still have to do that with my 11-year-old. So it's fun times. Flashcards definitely help with that, I think. But what we learn sometimes is that students learn differently. So flashcards can help some, but maybe some other kinds of things help other students. Maybe games, because a lot of students love games. And there's different levels of games. That's a whole other presentation for a whole other day. But serious gaming, as they call it, is definitely something that can really help to develop the skills students need. Certainly better than some of the other types of gaming, but the beginning levels of gaming, or especially things like typing and learning multiplication tables, things like that, definitely good to start with.
Sorry about that. I got disconnected. Well, it looks like we're at time, so I'm not sure what I missed in the last few minutes, but thank you so much, Brian. And if everyone wouldn't mind exiting the session, we'll be able to get this recording started and download it, and it'll be available for all of you to review later on. And Brian's presentation is available to download also from the KOOLCon site. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you all very much. I do appreciate you spending some time with me, and I know KOOLCon appreciates it. Our wonderful staff and contributors to the online learning, they do a great job, and I know they appreciate you guys coming, and that's why they host this event, is to help us out and get better at things. So thank you all.